Yeah. Hi everyone, welcome to Behind the Turf podcast. I'm here at GIS in Orlando in 2020, and I'm glad to have here with me a good friend which I've known for a while and seen around at different shows here, not here in Australia. Stan Kostka, who's been around the industry for a very long time.
25 years now.
25 years, been around the industry, been doing a lot of work with surfactants, been doing a lot of research work, and glad to have him on board. The only thing, his partner in crime, who you guys know as Dr Mike Fidanza, couldn't make it.
He's somewhere missing in action.
We don't know where he is. We've been trying to call him, but we don't know where he is. So he might actually come in through the door as we're doing this, but we'll see what happens. Stan, welcome to Behind the Turf.
Glad to be here.
Please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you've done and what you're doing now.
Okay, who am I? Well, some of you have met me in Australia. It's one of my favorite places to go. It's a heck of a long way from here, at least on the east coast of the United States. What have I done? I spent 25 plus years working for a major surfactant company that produced products that are used extensively in turf around the world. Lots of brands that you know that I was either involved in the development of or am the inventor on a number of really critical patents in this industry. Today, I'm semi-retired. I have a courtesy appointment at Penn State University where I get the opportunity to play with Mike Fidanza. And it's really nice to get to go out and play in the various sandboxes that we play in. And we're continuing to do research in the area of soils. We're looking at a range of soil surfactants and how they may behave. We're looking at novel chemistries. We're looking at some biological things, some various compounds that are new and novel, and basically continuing the kind of research that we were doing over the last 25 years or so.
So are you based with Mike at the Berks campus?
Not really. With this appointment, I get the opportunity to sort of flutter in and flutter out. So Mike and I have we meet regularly. Now, if any of you follow Mike, you may hear about the Soil Physics Journal Club. And that means that Mike and I, and perhaps another scientist or two, either from the USGA or from academia, will sometimes meet at a little facility and have a lunch with an adult beverage.
That's always the best way. The best decisions happen that way.
Right. And Mike and I have been speaking a lot around the world, as well as in the United States, on soil water repellency and on soil surfactants. And I think Nadeem has already told you about a webinar you can access online that gives you a lot of information.
That's some good information. We're going to do a little bit of a summary about that, but I will put a link to the show notes about it. It goes for quite long. I think it's about an hour and a half webinar, but definitely well worth it. Very interesting. So we will touch on that. So one of the things is with surfactants is there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. What should turf managers know in regards to surfactants? What should they know? What have you been finding out?
Some key things. It's always good to have someone come to you to sell you and offering you a product that has data. We've seen a preponderance of generic type materials here in the U.S. as well as in other markets around the world that are at best generic, sometimes not even disclosing on the label what's in the container, which is rather disappointing in this market. What should you know? Number one, ask for data, look for data. Soils in many ways are soils. So if you're in Australia and you see data from, let's say, Japan, or data from the United States, or data from Europe, from replicated trials, the soils will generally perform in a similar fashion. That's one thing I've learned in the last 25 plus years. I would look at how the surfactant performs. Try to find data from universities where they've compared product A to product B to product C. That's a lot of that's available, particularly here in the United States. There are some good labs doing research. New Mexico State University has some projects. Penn State has some projects. The University of California at Riverside. There's work coming out of the University of Florida. In the past, as well as some new research is going to be conducted there. So across the United States, there's a lot of testing going on. If you're in an area growing warm season grasses, and let's say in Queensland, you can look towards Florida here or Southern California. If you're working with cool season grasses, there's a lot of information coming out of places like New Mexico and Ohio and Minnesota, amongst other states. It's all applicable, particularly soil to soil to soil. And we see that in work that we've been involved with here in the US and specifically and in Europe and Asia.
That's quite interesting. I guess one of the things with you mentioned with those universities, I'll look at them and put some links on the show notes as well for people to look at them. I know, yeah, definitely UC Riverside. I know Jim Baird's been done a lot of work, and their climate they've been just gone through a major drought as what we're going through now. So it'd be interesting to see the work there. But it is interesting you also say with the soils are very similar, because sometimes you hear, oh, has it been tested in my country? Why is it the same? But all the soils, they say they're all the same. So I guess if you're seeing the same replicated trials in 3-4 different countries.
Now let me drill down on that.
Yep.
This is something that I spoke on in the seminar that Mike and I spoke on in a seminar we gave yesterday, as well as seminars we gave last week at BTME in the UK. Soils are all soils. If you have hydrophobicity in a soil, and severe hydrophobicity, they're going to behave similarly. And you'll find that there are differences in how surfactants perform, particularly as soils become more and more water repellent. We're also seeing some really interesting things in soils that are considered wettable. Perhaps one of the big advances coming now is looking at what happens around roots, growing roots in the soil as the plant goes through wet to dry cycles, as you all do on your golf courses. Dry them down, wet them up, dry them down, try to make them hard and fast. Well, there's something interesting coming out of research going on in Europe predominantly, but also in Australia, where folks are looking at various root exudates and their involvement in how a plant takes up water, how the plant dries down, and how these materials protect the plant as it dries. And they're finding that in a growing plant, water repellency is developing very quickly right around the roots, even if the soil is wettable. Really striking kinds of research. And this environment right around the roots is where there's lots of communication going on between the plant, the microbes around it, the soils around it. Various switches are being turned on in the plant. There are all these chemical reactions going on. Wow, this is the future.
That is interesting. That is, yeah. I'm thinking we haven't just really scratched the surface.
Oh, we're just now. These are all observations made really about the last 5 or 6 years, and the pieces are starting to fall into place. So you build a golf course. You have a green. That green is a sand-based green or a USGA spec green. Everything is wettable when you start, and then you start seeing things happen quick early on. And we're finding that while the bulk soil is behaving normally, water is infiltrating, there are changes going on around the roots. And what are the ramifications of that? And I think we'll be seeing a lot of information coming from the world of soil physics, of all things, coming back into turf over the next few years.
Okay, so that work, is that being done here you're going to be doing some work of that here in the US, or it's going to mostly come out of Europe? You're going to say
it's mostly coming out of Europe right now. Mike and I hope to be doing some research in that area here in the United States.
Yeah. Okay, and with that work, we're finding out more and more. Is it because we are looking for it, or is it we've now got more tools to be able to identify?
Bingo. We have the tools, and we have people making observations and not being able to understand their observations. And it's like, oh my, what's going on here? Why is it going on? And a lot of the folks that used to work on understanding water repellency and had theories on it are now stepping back and saying, oh my, not only is the plant exuding these compounds that we refer to as amphiphilic, they like water and hate water, but so aren't the microorganisms in the environment. There's these various interactions occurring. My, how can we play off those? You know, for a while back in the 90s, there were a lot of companies selling bugs in a jug.
Yep.
And most of them, we all know, didn't go very far.
No.
Well, maybe now we have enough understanding to be able to determine, if I put X on the soil, can I turn on certain microorganisms? And if I can turn on those certain clusters of microorganisms, can I see things like better nutrient uptake, better nutrient solubilization, better production of plant-associated hormonal materials? Can we get certain enzymes produced that are going to maybe help us control insects or certain pathogens? I think there's going to be a lot of discoveries in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, it's going to be quite interesting. And you're semi-retired. Don't fully retire just yet.
I'm not going to.
Oh, good. And then going back to now with soil surfactants, what should a turf manager look for when they are, like you were talking about the data and everything like that, but we see penetrants, we see different molecules of vertically wet, horizontally wet. What should they be looking for? Should they just be trying out what works for them?
There's a lot of misinformation in the market these days. There are a lot of products making claims about doing certain things with no support. The word penetrant, for example, if you're selling or using a spray adjuvant to enhance the performance of a foliar applied insecticide or a foliar applied PGR or a foliar applied herbicide, that term has a very specific scientific definition. Those definitions don't exist in soils. And using the term penetrant is basically taking something from one world and applying it in another without the soils guys, the soil scientists, really agreeing on it being a legitimate definition. We have a lot of that going on. In this country, it's rampant right now. In Europe, it's occurring, and I know it's occurring in Australia. One of the things that's happening is several USDA chapters here in North America are funding research that's going on at several universities, Texas Tech, Nebraska, Minnesota, and one other institution, trying to get down to the bottom of some of these claims like penetrant, retainer, water pusher, water mover. Watch the space. I think over the next few years, we're going to see some of that information emerging in the marketplace. And I applaud the fact that this work is being pursued.
No, it is good. I think there hasn't been as much. There was an early push probably about 10 years ago on different surfactants and the likes, and a lot of data's come out, but recently there hasn't really been as much.
Well, the market has really gone generic in the last few years, and rather than there being uniqueness and separation, there's more and more materials that are, quote, I'm the same as. Right now in the US market, there are over 200 products being sold in this market. In the UK market, there's about 70 products that we could find via the internet or through the industry. And if you start looking at these, many of them are composed of a small cluster of molecules, and it becomes troubling to me when you see diverse claims and people are only handling a few molecules to use in their formulations. There's something going on. They're not really that different. So how do we then begin teasing out? And there are some materials, a number with patent protection in the marketplace by a range of companies that actually have something that is new, that is unique, and can be separated based on performance.
That's quite interesting there. So what do you see, I guess, the future with turf management, with surfactants, with this? You're talking about turning the light switch on and on, interacting with the microbes. Will we see, I guess, more consistent, easier, where we're going right through Australia in drought at the moment, those type of things here? Will we be able to see where the surfactants coming on the market or technology coming where we're going to be using a lot less water? We know that surfactants save water, but are we going to see another big reduction in water usage?
You may
maintaining
see
the same quality?
Well, looking at water reduction, currently surfactants, at least from the research that I've been involved with or seen published, work coming out of Florida and California and New Mexico, as well as some coming out of Penn State, show that under diverse turf types, diverse soil types, you can reduce water inputs 30, 40, 50% and still maintain quality. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And the 50% number is not unrealistic. You may have to compromise a little bit on quality, but if water is that limiting, you can still maintain turf. I think the future is going to show us some more softer chemistry that can do the same. I think we're also going to see at some point, is it in the next 2 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, I think we're going to start seeing some folks looking at combinations of biologicals to try to achieve the same thing. There's a lot of work going on in in Western Australia, looking at some of these scenarios. CSIRO is doing some work, as well as let me get this right, the University of Western Australia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's work going on in Europe as well. Let's see where it goes. There's a lot of promise today.
That's good. Last thing I want to touch on is a disease that's close to my heart, and close to your heart, and Dr. Fidanza's fairy ring.
Fairy ring.
Because you've had a lot to do with it.
Excuse me. I know there's no advertising on this, but
did not you know,
I know
this.
this chemistry. Dr. Fidanza and I knew Mike when he was a grad student, and then we reconnected when he started working in the industry. I'm not sure what the name of the company was at that point when he was there, whether it was Agrivo or something else. But I had the privilege of working with Mike on looking at the interaction between surfactants and fluthalinol. Wow. He was able to show how much you could improve performance of the fungicide in looking at reducing disease. Really impressive. And I think there are some new cutting edge things as I move away from my volunteering to put a plug in for your product.
Thank you. No, didn't have to.
But if you're looking at disease management, we've been working with some compounds and finding that, geez, we can have some really good impacts on leaf wetness and leaf wetness duration. Well, why am I bringing that up? If you look at diseases like dollar spot on bentgrass, you look at anthracnose, you look at gray leaf spot, possibly even microdochium and some other pathogens. If you can reduce the duration of leaf wetness, you can reduce disease. And one of the things that we've seen in some recent studies is you can get some pretty significant effects with certain surfactants. Is it the same level of control as using a fungicide? What do you sell for using for that application? Chlorothalonil?
Chlorothalonil. For dollar spot and microdochium, yes.
Excellent. Is it the same level of control as you would see with the fungicide by itself? No. But pretty darn good suppression. And in a world where the number of pesticides is dropping, the number of new materials is dropping, and where regulation, particularly in Europe, Canada, and parts of the United States are emerging, we're losing access to materials. And there may be alternatives.
So I guess there's going to be a big push for a lot of companies to develop something different, and that'll drive that, you see?
Well, I think there's a few companies over in Europe that we would normally know for their activities in more traditional synthetic chemistries that are actively moving in this area.
So, it's going to be
I
interesting.
saw that last week at BTME.
Yeah, that's one show that I got to get to. That's also known as Bigger or Harrogate. They did it the week before. It is a good one to go to. I always say to people, come to GIS, but also the BTME one I've heard has been getting bigger.
It's getting bigger.
And better and better every year.
And it didn't snow this year, and it didn't rain, and it wasn't icy.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Was it cold?
We saw the sun. Oh, it was cold, but we saw the sun every day. That's a first.
Well, Stan, thank you very much for your time, for being on Behind the Turf. I really appreciate it. Good luck to everything. We hope to see you in Australia soon.
You'll see me hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And goodbye, everybody. I love Australia, and to my friends in Queensland, looking forward to seeing you soon.